Hello, I am John Najarian, and RebelCon 2022 is almost here. We do have a virtual pass. The virtual pass gives you full access to everything, all the streams, the live trading sessions, all of our fabulous keynote speakers. So to learn more about what's going on at RebelCon 2022, whether you're in person or virtual, check out marketrebellion.com/Dallas. Welcome back.
He did it again, Jared.
One of these days we're going to get that, one of those.
He's going to have that thing snapping down.
Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge with Pete Najarian, John Najarian. Jared is our producer. And we're going to give you the 1 minute macro, folks, because as you've heard us say before, that's all it's worth.
It's all it's worth.
1 minute. You don't want 40 minutes of people droning on about, well, the Dow's down 83 and the S&P. Gee, what do you think, Pete?
Well, John, I think it's all just such a bunch of crap. And all these guys just sling the same crap that they just read on Bloomberg or Yahoo Finance or whatever. And it's like, hey, you know what? Here's the reality of it. Look at the 10-year. You know what's going to happen in the markets. And you and I have been talking about that, John, for what? The better part of 8 months? There's your macro minute. Yeah, the 10 years approaching 3.3. Holy crap. Yeah, we got to do something. And people are selling and moving over. So there it is.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, then let's dive right in, Pete. Why waste any more time on it? Right. Let's dive right into Rivian. I actually saw one of these up close and personal this weekend, Pete. And they're a lot smaller than you'd think, too. Rivian, of course, EV truck, came out with a lot of fanfare. It's a nice looking truck, but it is small. It's smaller than a Tacoma, Pete. The Toyota Tacoma. It's nowhere near your truck, the F-150 or the Ram or anything else. Now, we both kind of understand why, but it had a pretty significant pop because they're going to be just focusing on the more expensive models. In other words, more of that, which means bigger profit margins, right?
Yeah, I think they're going the direction of Tesla, John. I think they figured out that that's the direction that's the best to start with, at least. And then in the future, when they've got all of these big, huge plants that they've got plans for 2024, these huge facilities where they can produce more, that's when I think you can start to expand. So I think they were smart enough to pivot and say, you know what, we're going for the big ticket item. And that's exactly what Tesla started off with. As anyone knows, we started off with that S, and it was absolutely beautiful, but it was expensive. And then, of course, you come out with the less expensive brand and different ways to make it even less expensive. But I think that's part of the trick. And, John, when you look at what's going on within Rivian and you see what their cash flow is their cash burn, but what they've got in cash versus debt, they've got plenty of room through 2024 to be able to shift around just enough that they can do this. And maybe even they can start pushing things out a little bit faster into the future as money starts to work a little differently for the company.
Yeah, the real trick will be, can they produce enough vehicles to justify the price? But Pete, how about this one? I saw that this poor gentleman jumped from those so-called Jenga apartment building in New York. It's a condo. It's like 60 stories tall, Pete, but it looks like chunks that are put together like this. And a 52-year-old executive, turns out he was with Bed Bath & Beyond. He's the CFO, and he committed suicide this weekend with his wife in the other room. Wow. Yeah, prayers for her. But my gosh, obviously it was a combination of they've been accused, and he's been named about some of the shenanigans maybe that went on with this company, Pete, kind of juggling the numbers a little bit. And again, those are just accusations, nothing proved out yet.
Yeah, it's scary, John. I mean, this is a company we talked about it so many different times, talking about it as a meme stock. We know the short interest. Matter of fact, The short outstanding interest right now is about 36%. That's a huge number. Don't even take a look at what the float is, John, as far as the short, because that's triple digits, by the way. It's really interesting to see what's going on here. It's the saddest story, I think. When I read about this, you just feel awful for somebody. But, you know, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of chatter. We know that there's been a lot of interesting things going on within Best Buy, or excuse me, Bed Bath & Beyond. And it's definitely an issue. When you go from a $3 billion market cap a year ago to 700 million, that statement in and of itself tells you that the CFO was in a position where he was pretty daggone uncomfortable with what was going on there, John. And it's brutal. Let's jump to Apple, John. I think that, you know, with Apple, it's pretty interesting because we always talk about this. You get into the fall, they always have these major events, right? And this is another one of those. And will it be about the phone once again? Because they've got obviously the new lineup of everything that they want to put out there. The one thing that's interesting also, John, is, you know, they've moved back into being a company last quarter, at least, where the iPhone is almost 50% now again. And that's, I don't know necessarily that that's a good thing, John. I think it was great to see, you know, the services and the wearables and all the other different aspects of who Apple really is starting to make enough that they were becoming a nice big percentage of what it was, and the phone was less reliant. We're seeing that the iPhone, obviously last quarter is just one quarter, but 49%. I'm a little bit concerned on that end of things, John. And that's not where you're getting as good a margins right now as you are in some of the others.
Yeah. And Pete, I won't just.
Well, we might have had John freeze up there, guys. Hey, Jared, until John gets back, why don't we finish that one up? You know, when we look at Apple, Apple's gone through a lot of different things. And sorry, John froze up. He's traveling, so he's always somewhere, you know, in parts unknown. But, you know, we started off the year at 182. We've been down as low as 130 by June. And then we've made that big run up through August. And I think we're getting John back, but we got up to 175. And then we adjusted right back down to 155, basically where we are right now. This is a lot of volatility for a stock that does not trade normally under a lot of volatility, and probably because it is such a behemoth. We're talking about $2.7 trillion company. So there is a lot to be said about Apple, and obviously going into this event, this is a major catalyst. Do we have John back? I think we might, or do we not, Jared? Nope.
No, not yet.
Jared's shaking his head. All right, so next we're going to hit CVS, and CVS is another one. They did actually outbid Amazon. They outbid United Health, and they paid $8 billion for Signify Health. So that's a big story, obviously, for CVS as they try to continue to move into the space and make themselves a little bit bigger all the time. And this is a major buy for them. It's health risk assessments. It's provider in all 50 states. So they have a great presence, very much like a CVS, very much like maybe even a Walgreens. Walgreens has made their own moves over the last couple of years. CVS had moved in and made some partnerships with Target, but this is a very big acquisition in and of itself as well. So when will it actually close? Well, about the first half of 2023. There is a little bit of time to let this happen, but very interesting. And they've got the cash to be able to do it. So this is not, this is not a monstrous stretch for CVS as they try to position themselves for this. We still don't got John, but I'm going to give you some unusual options. How about that? And then we'll see if we get John back by then. I'm going to start off with the spiders, Jared. And the reason that I'm using the SPY, John had talked about this not too terribly long ago, and he was talking about some of the monstrous buying that we had seen in there. And most of it of late has been a lot more bearish than bullish. Well, I hate to tell everybody this, but I'm seeing bearish paper again in the spider. As a matter of fact, they're going to the very last week in September. September 30th is the expiration cycle, and they are buying the 390 puts in those spider calls. 46,500 of those puts being bought. That's a big number. They're hedging those or they're rolling around, but either way, selling the 360 puts in this particular thing as well. $2.50 for the ones they're selling, the ones they're buying right around $10. So you're looking at a $30 spread that's going to cost you about $8 there. So risk reward, that definitely fits into a lot of what John and I talk about all the time. We want at least a multiple of 3 or 4. So that's where I stand on the spiders. I see you're back, John. So what do you got for us for your unusual?
Well, Pete, sorry about that. Guess must have had a Wi-Fi glitch. You're hearing me okay now, though?
Everything's great.
Okay. HYG, Pete, this is the high yield corporate bonds. So they have been coming down all year. The chart looks almost exactly like this. And somebody's betting they go lower still because, today with it like 74.5, they were buying the 73 puts, Pete. That's a bet, of course, that things continue to go south. And they were buying the March 73 put. So this is not a short-term trade. This is a trade out there into the future. So, even if there is a pause in September, which I don't think there will be, Pete, I think they're going to go probably another 75 in September on the 21st when they make that last move. I think that might be one of the last moves, by the way. And I guess it depends on how the corporates are looking, in addition to what's hit them right now from the Fed and from bond traders continuing to sell with both hands. They think rates are going up, and so far they've been spot on.
All right, John, we're going to jump to sports because I'm really excited about, we have college football back. We got the NFL coming back. They start off on Thursday. Let's start with college football. I mean, first of all, how much fun is it to have Kirk Herbstreit and the gang back on? I mean, it's just, they get up there. It is a show. And that's, good God, it's like 4 or 5 hours long these days. I mean, they keep stretching out, and they're doing it for all the right reasons because it's exciting. College football is just unbelievable. When we did get to those Saturday night games, John, how about Florida and Utah? Utah goes out there, and they're number 7 in the country. Florida's not ranked, by the way. They're not ranked, which is a Florida team, not ranked. That's highly unusual. Yep. All they did was go out and go toe-to-toe with Utah, number 7 in the country. A lot of people were talking about them as maybe a sleeper into the playoff system. Not anymore, because they're in the Pac-12. You can't lose. If you're in the Pac-12, you better go undefeated. They didn't do that. They got beat 29-26. Florida, and I'll tell you what, that quarterback Richardson for Florida, John, he did it with his legs. He ran for 100 yards. He did it with his arm. He threw for almost 200 yards. It's amazing how good they looked. And, oh, by the way, another Pac-12 team, Oregon. What if I told you Georgia only put 49 on them and beat them 49-3? I mean, what's wrong with the Pac-12, for God's sakes?
Well, they were so innovative, Pete. Obviously with Kelly back in the day. And they were putting up those placards, to basically go no huddle and just have, that was a significant edge. Well, it didn't take too long before everybody in college football and a lot of pros were doing the same thing. So obviously the pros, you've got the head set into the quarterback. But in college, man, they just sit there, holding up those placards, and it's no longer a big deal to have a run and gun that does the no huddle. So I think now it comes down to the great athletes, and obviously they're in the Big Ten and the SEC.
And a credit. I was just going to say, John, sorry to interrupt. A credit to those teams for actually scheduling games, even if they did get to be a blowout in the Oregon game. When you've got teams, SC plays the Little Sisters of the Poor, and everybody else seems to line up against all these schmucks, and they beat them 70-3. I mean, at some point in time, that gets a little tiresome. So I appreciate these guys scheduling these very tough games, at least early on.
Yeah. And Pete, I just throw out also that when you identified Ohio State, Notre Dame, and you said, boy, what's wrong with this spread, 17.5? They ended up only winning by 11, and Notre Dame was beating them for a while. So, there's an issue here that, Notre Dame isn't as bad as some people thought with that 17.5 point spread, and the Ohio State receiver got hurt. So anyway, what about any pro stuff or anything you're looking at, Pete?
Well, John, that's what makes this so daggone much fun, because Thursday, we already get our chance at Thursday NFL. It kicks off, right? And you've got the Bills playing the Rams. You can't get much better than that. And I guess the reason I like this game so much is this. This is like a potential Super Bowl preview. I'm not saying these are the two teams, but I'm not saying it's not either, because it's a good possibility. First of all, the Rams, we already know what they did last year, and they've got a great quarterback. Everybody's worried about his elbow. Seems like Stafford's doing okay. Cooper Kupp was the best receiver in the NFL last year. That was pretty impressive. And then on the other side, you got a guy named Josh Allen, who everybody has finally figured out, you know what, this kid's the real deal, because he can throw the ball, he can run the ball, he's very athletic, and he's as big as a tight end. So it's a great combination for sure. Stephon Diggs, you've got Von Miller, who, oh, by the way, he was out west just last year, and now he's playing up there in Buffalo. So they are loaded, I think, on both sides, whether you're looking at the Rams or you're looking at the Bills. It's going to be great. SoFi Stadium is always an unbelievable place just to see football. Even on TV, it's fun to watch. And I think the fact that that stadium is absolutely beautiful, it really does stand out. There's some great players on both sides, and it's just amazing what these two teams have been able to do in the last couple of years. Some of it through the draft, some of it through free agency. I see you're back, John. So what is your thoughts about, is this a preview maybe to the Super Bowl?
Uh-oh. I don't think we have John in audio.
All right. Well, we're having trouble with John. Sorry about that, guys. I got Jared sitting there. Jared, you're looking good, and I love that T-shirt, bro. I mean, it's not the bull, but I got to tell you, it's the Market Rebellion, and we love that, so we appreciate all that. Folks, have a great day. We really appreciate you watching Rebels Edge. Sorry about some of the glitches, but you know what? We got to move with it, just like you do in sports or anything else. Markets started off the day phenomenal. They got sold off. They came back. They got sold. I mean, we've been all over the place. It's unbelievable. Join us again for the Rebels Edge, 1 p.m. Eastern. We will see you on Thursday. John and I are going to give you a little bit more about what's going on, not just in the markets, not just in usual, but we're going to hit some sports as well. We'll see you then.